All right, now that we have pretty much exhausted all of the different template tags associated with posts and archives of posts and categories and all of those things, let's turn our attention to page.php. And as you think, this controls static pages and it follows back to singular and ultimately index.php. So just like some of the other things we've seen, we could also extend this with page-id for a specific page ID or -slug, just like we've seen with others. So this should be expected, but still, let's go ahead and jump into this and look at how to code all this out, because page.php is definitely one that you will have in your repertoire, I'm pretty much guessing, unless posts and pages all look the same and you use singular. You probably won't use page ID and slug as much, I'm guessing, especially when we look at custom options shortly, but still page.php is essential. So let's go ahead and check this out. All right, now what we're going to do is open up singular.php because this is the fallback that page.php will fall back to. And you'll notice that we have content page loading here. So the reason for this is because we have single controlling all of the blog posts, but singular is going to be working with pages by default. So this does raise the question of, if you have a single.php and a page.php, which we're about to create, do you also need a singular as a backup? And the reason for that may be yes. When we look at custom post types and content, we'll still see it falling back to singular.php. So it may be helpful to have a generic one here. But when we just have posts and pages, it does become an option that you may not need. So what we're going to do is just copy this and rename it to page.php. And really at this point, there's no difference, right? It's still pulling in that. We could change this, but that's not a major change. So let's do something new here. One thing that is common is, instead of just having the same sidebar for your blog section as for standard static pages, is to change that up and do that differently. So what we could do here is we could say get sidebar page. Now we haven't created that. We've got a sidebar splash. So let's come into sidebar, open that up, and save that as sidebar-page. So now that will work, but it is not going to load a different sidebar. We can see it still is active, main sidebar, otherwise it'll show nothing, and get dynamic sidebars pulling in the main sidebar. So let's change this here and here to page sidebar. So again, this won't do anything yet because we have not created a page sidebar. So the next thing we have to do is come into our functions.php file and duplicate what we have when we register sidebar for our main sidebar. Now, I will point out that anytime you're copying and pasting the exact same code, there's a chance that you could write a function that will help you do it more efficiently. And that is probably the better approach. But because we're just kind of starting off here, and I don't think it's too bad what we're about to do, I'm just going to copy the existing one that we have. And inside of this same function, so notice WP hierarchy widgets init, this opening curly brace and this closing it, I still put it in, so it will still be called when we hook into the widgets when they initialize. But instead of main sidebar, we're going to say page sidebar, change this to page sidebar for page sidebar, right? And then this can all stay the same. So with all of that set up, let's go ahead now and take a look at a static page on our site. Okay, so I am on my sample page and we can see page.php is loading, but we have nothing in the sidebar. And let's just double check by coming into our customizers, into widget, and look at this. We now have a page sidebar and we could add some custom content. Let's just say something like, welcome to the site, have a look around Lorem. Cool. So if we save and publish that, and then we navigate, for example, to the blog, notice that now we have our main sidebar, which we could probably rename to blog sidebar. That might make sense. I'm going to leave it as it is. But anytime we come to a page that's being controlled by page.php, we see our other sidebar. And that's something that could be pretty helpful with stuff that you're building. So at this point, we've seen page.php. Let's take a quick look at page ID and page slug. And again, these are going to work just as you expect, but let's still go through the motions and check it out. All right, you'll notice on my site I have parent page, which is an actual page with a bunch of children, and I've listed child page 5 and child page 4. So this is what I'm going to use for my custom ID and custom slug templates. So if I come into my pages, I could see if I come into page 4 that it's going to be 1096 is my ID. Again, this may be similar, it may be different for you depending on how you're set up, but the next step is going to be the same. We will come into our page.php template, save it as page hyphen, and then it was 1096, I believe. Yep, 1096. So we have that correct. And then, let's go ahead and just make this extended. So that will be full width, and we'll take off the extra sidebar here and just leave everything else the same for the moment. Let's take a look at that. Oh, we want to say hyphen 1096 there. So now if I come into my site, parent page child 04, notice that it's full width and we've got the correct template there. So that may be helpful for you, and it's going to be real similar. Let's do the same thing for parent page 05, which we would use the slug for, which is going to be child page 05. So back in our page template here, we would just save this out with child page 05, change that down here, and then what do we want to do different? You want to throw in the splash here or something like that. Now, I don't always recommend throwing people onto a splash page with no navigation, because what you could see now is, oh, we got here, but let's see, how do we get back? We can't do that. So I could back in my browser again, show you we're on a parent page. We click into child page 05. We get nothing. We could go back in our browser 04. It's going to be displaying that. So these can be helpful for you. I would definitely suggest go ahead and bang this out with the project that you're building along with me here, so that you've got the practice and you've got the resources to always go back and look at. And again, pages, you may or may not find them helpful. So when you're building out your own project, which you should also be keeping up, then make sure at least you have a page.php. Decide if you want a singular.php, maybe create a different template include for that, because we'll see later on it can still be a helpful fallback template to use. Or decide at this point, hey, you know what? I don't need one. I'm just going to keep it simple. I'm just going to have a single.php for posts and a page.php for pages, and I don't need that other fallback. So decide that on your own site, whatever works best for you. But either way, go into pages a little bit more depth, and then we get to look at the front page.php, which falls back to page.php and can be a little bit tricky, and that's going to be for dealing with static home pages. So we've got a lot more to explore. Go ahead, get caught up on the page.php and its variations, and we'll pick up in the next lesson.